Hello, my random viewers, and welcome to Randomly Offensive. Today, we will be continuing Genetic Wars in Genetic Wars July 27th, Part 3. And if you had missed the previous chapters, they should, and hopefully, and most likely, will be linked right here, right now, at the tip top of this video if you want to clickety on them and check them out. If not, let's continue with Genetic Wars, July 27th, Part 3. Vince, Abraham, Al, Walter, and Alex all stand collectively as they stare at the beast who stands before them. The tall, large, and fearsome beast that goes by the name of no other than Hades. As Vince approaches Walter, "So, if you have a human form, then why is it that Hades chooses not to have one of his own?" says Vince as he looks at Walter through the corner of his eye, with Walter perking his chin up as he realizes that Vince has learned some things. And Walter is not sure if this is good or bad. As Walter shrugs his shoulders, "Oh, yes, I am in my human form. Though you are wrong about Hades, yeah, Hades is in his human form. The only difference is that after thousands and thousands of years of being pure evil, my friend, his form has become possessed, poisoned, delusioned, and tainted to look in that way to resemble his pure evil, responds Walter, with Vince giving Walter a smirk. "His pure evil? And just exactly who decides that one is evil? Who makes that decision, Walter?" says Vince, with Walter now connecting and locking eyes with Vince. "I don't see how that is any your business, Vince. To answer your question, in Hades' case, I was the one that made that decision, and it was the right decision, says Walter, with Vince beginning to snarl and getting angry towards Walter. "You are the decision maker. And all this time I thought the chief and Dracula was the threat against my freedom. But that would appear to be wrong. It is you and those you work for. Those are the ones that challenge our freedom. And I've been blind to it," says Vince, with Walter standing in silence while the rest of the group too stands in silence. As Vince pulls out a cigarette and lights it as he inhales a large cloud of smoke and exhales. "Well, one more thing, Walter. What have you been sent down for? What has the Agent of the Guardians come down to achieve?" "I have been sent down to protect somebody. To protect Enough of the wordplay and the games, Walter. Who were you specifically sent down to protect? Is it the person you lie with? The person that you have defended? Or is it me? Or is it somebody else? Who, Walter? Have you been sent down? Have you been missioned, tasked with protecting?
Al Minosta is the person that I have been sent down to protect. He is a great asset to the other Guardians, and they have plans for him, responds Walter, still locked in a gaze with Vince, with Al feeling somewhat of pride. Me? You've been sent down to protect me? And I have a future with higher entities, huh? Well, that's pretty cool. Don't you think, Vince? It's kinda cool, says Al, trying to lighten up the mood. Though Vince and Walter have not left their connected gaze. As Vince continues puffing on his cigarette.
Well then, go on. Confront Hades. Do your job. Protect Al. You are both one of the same. You are both sent from higher ranks of people, higher class of beings. And since you're the man that destroyed Olympus, it is only reasonable to assume you have fought him once before, and it is only reasonable to assume the outcome was you as the victor. So do your job, Walter, says Vince as he stands proudly, trying to seem taller than Walter, even though Walter towers over him. Do your job and protect Al. I can't think of any reason I, Abraham, Alex, or Al should get our hands dirty with a foe that you are more than capable of dealing with. Besides, I'm sure he's out of our league anyways, says Vince as he nonchalantly sits on a rock, snuffing out his cigarette and lighting up another one right after, with Alex looking at Vince confused, for she's never seen Vince act like this, with Abraham smirking and looking at Vince proud out of the corner of his eye. Walter nods his head. Well, very well. You have good points, Vince, and I am forced to agree that this is out of your league. So, I will do my job and protect all of you, since you have never been able to accomplish that task, says Walter, trying to get a rise out of Vince. However, Vince just waves him away, and Walter begins walking towards Hades. As Abraham then looks at Vince, well, this brings me back. I haven't seen this side of you in ages, and it has been so long since you pulled out these kind of stops, Vince. It really does bring a tear to my eye, says Abraham, with Al and Alex confused. Alex gently puts her hand on Vince's shoulder.
What exactly is going on, Vince? Why aren't we helping? Why are you just sitting here, relaxing, and sending Walter out on his own to fight Hades?
It is simple, Alex. Hades is not the strongest foe we've encountered. At least, not in his current form. As he is now, the Chief was a far more dangerous foe. I want to see what he is capable of. I want to see his true form. I want to see Walter's true form. And once I have seen that, I will then make my decision.
Decision? Interrupts Al. What decision? What? I'm pretty sure we've missed something, says Al, with Vince just watching Walter walk towards Hades.
A decision must be made, and I am the one that will make it. And once I have made my decision, it will decide the fate of all of our future. It is time for me to do what I do best, and it is time for Abraham to do what he does best. Abraham, you know what I want you to do,
says Vince, with Abraham squatting down and putting his palms against each other and putting his fingers upon his chin. Yes, Vince, I am fully aware. You want me to examine. I will study every split second of this fight, and I will have the information you desire, says Abraham, as Walter is now toe-to-toe with Hades. Tell me, Hades, must I once again kill you? Must I once again imprison you? Why do you keep rising from the ground? Do you enjoy being slain by my hands, or are you foolish enough to actually think that you will eventually beat me? Tell me, Hades, are you a fool? Or does me beating you turn you on?
You refer to me as the fool? You are the fool you claim I to be. A man so foolish that he accomplishes every mission, every goal sent down to him by cowardly, selfish, self-righteous men who do not think of themselves any less than gods. You have killed thousands of souls, imprisoned and entrapped countless of innocents. You destroyed Olympus. You sank Atlantis at the very command of your beholders. You granted me this awful, horrible title of Hades. The embodiment of evil is what you had granted me, not by your own will, but by the will of those who want to see this kingdom as nothing more than rubble. This planet has never been respected. This planet has never been treated questioned your masters? Or do you do whatever they say, like a good dog needing a treat? Though there are always two sides of the coin, but your side is covered in blood, and I'm about to cleanse it.
Responds Hades, with Walter only glaring and snarling at him as Hades looks down with a face that shows more pity than anger, more sorrow than hatred. And as they stare down at each other, Vince watches as he listens to the words of Hades, knowing that Hades is no different than Dracula or the Chief or even himself, as he sees himself as a savior, as he sees himself as the hero. Though that is not true for any of them, Hades will most likely be just as much in the wrong as the rest of them, and Walter, too, most likely thought that he was the hero, that he was doing the right thing, along with his handlers. However, Vince has reached the conclusion that it is not up to anybody to decide the right path. It's not up to anyone to decide the right path for an entire planet, a country, a city, or even a village. Vince knows that this must be a decision based on the majority. And so Vince continues sitting back, leaning on the rock, as he smokes a third cigarette, waiting for the fight to commence, as Al and Alex watch, holding their breath, and Abraham focuses, ready to examine. Hades finally delivers the first strike. Hades' fists then torpedoes down towards Walter, as Walter quickly dives backwards out of the way. Hades' fist connects to the ground, creating a crater underneath his own fist, causing the ground to vibrate, as Walter then charges in for a tackle and wraps his arms around the waist of Hades, for Hades towers Walter by nearly 4 feet, as these two giants take their battles into the ground, and Walter slams Hades down. He begins delivering punch after punch into the gut of Hades, as Hades is trying to strike the skull of Walter over and over, delivering massive punches to the skull of Walter. As Walter delivers punches to the gut of Hades, they finally disconnect from each other, as Walter stands with his arms raised and ready to fight. Hades then is pulled into the ground and is consumed by the land beneath them. As the ground is still shaking, Hades is now nowhere to be seen, with Walter quickly looking around and moving around as he's searching for where Hades may have gone. Hades' arm erupts from the ground and grabs hold of Walter, and then Hades' arm is pulled back into the ground, slamming Walter into it, with Hades having another arm coming out of the ground, this time with Walter flat on his back, and the hand comes down into a punch, driving Walter even further into the land, even further into the ground, with now suddenly Hades delivering countless amounts of punches coming straight from the ground as he begins striking Walter, with Walter having no idea where the next punch is going to come from, as it erupts from the ground suddenly and randomly, striking him in the gut, or in the back, or in the skull, or in the jaw. Walter is quickly becoming defenseless. As Abraham watches the fight, studying and examining the movements of Walter and Hades, I figured it out. Hades is a consumption type. His genetic blessing is absorption, says Abraham, with Al widening his eyes. Oh, hold on. You expect me to believe that Hades, the god of death, is a consumption type? Isn't that like the weakest genetic blessing?
It is, interrupts Vince. That would explain many things. In our mythology, Hades has always been written to be more of a tragic hero than a villain. It wasn't until modern media that Hades became a villain. In the original scriptures, in the original mythology, Hades was simply a misunderstood god. He was more of a tragic, forgotten hero that nobody ever saw his acts as righteous, but only evil, regardless of his true intent. And so it would make sense that part of that would be his pure skill, will to accomplish, and his brutality to achieve his goals. Him having the weakest genetic blessing explains a lot, but we shall not underestimate him. Even the weakest ability can be crafted to become overwhelming power. Tell me, Abraham, what kind of consumption type is he? What does he absorb?
I have not gotten that far yet. I do not know. I want to say earth, land, rock, but I have a feeling that is incorrect, and so I shall not assume. I must give him further examination, says Abraham, with Alex then interluding. Well, I don't think that is just land or the ground. He challenged me in the final battle. He was able to move through mirrors and through my monitors. I'm not sure what he absorbs, but it's definitely not land. It has to be something else. Reflection? Can he absorb a reflection? Well, that would not make much sense. I don't see any reflection on the battleground that he had chosen. I don't think there's any water or anything bright or shiny enough to cast a reflection. It has to be something else, but I am not positive. Give me more time without interruption, and I will find out. And unlike some of our other team members, I will inform you of what I know, says Abraham as he glares to Alex. Meanwhile, as Walter and Hades continue their fight, Hades thrusts a massive punch erupting from the ground once more, going straight towards the jawline of Walter. However, this time, Walter has managed to grasp Hades' arm, and with a mighty yank and a mighty pull, he plucks the giant Hades out of the ground, pulling him straight from the rubble and the roots of the land, and throwing him over his shoulder. He slams Hades down into the ground, as Hades then is consumed once more by the ground and erupts back from it behind Walter as he wraps his arms around the throat of Walter and begins squeezing him as he goes into a reverse chokehold, wrapping his biceps and flexing them as much as he can, bulging them against the throat of Walter. With Walter beginning to suffocate, he begins elbowing Hades, elbow after elbow, thrusting them into the gut of Hades. He then manages to reach up above his head and grab hold of one of Hades' horns and tears him directly out of the skull of Hades and flips the horn upside down and lodges it into the kneecap of Hades. With Hades grunting and groaning, he lets go of Walter, as Walter then turns around and sweep kicks the knee of Hades, lodging the horn even deeper into his kneecap. Hades goes down onto his knees, now head to head, and perfectly measured up to Walter. Walter begins throwing punch after punch, connecting left hook after right hook into the jaw of Hades, as Hades tries to defend but is incapable of doing so, as Walter uses the thousands of years he has of experience, rotating his fists in such a way that he is able to maneuver around every block, connecting each strike to the jawline of Hades. As Hades finally has had enough, he quickly reaches out, absorbing one of the punches from Walter as he grasps the ribs of Walter and hurls him across the field, smashing him into the side of a hill, as Hades then pulls a giant piece of land out of the ground, the size of a boulder, and as thick and as hard as one. He lifts it above his head and hurls it with great might as the boulder flings through the air and smashes into Walter, smashing him in between the now thrown boulder-sized piece of land and the hill, as the land shatters upon impact. Walter begins to stumble, but refuses to fall as he charges once again towards Hades. Hades puts his arms up in the defensive and tries to strike Walter as he becomes near, and Walter somersaults around the punch to his right and simultaneously grabs the horn and pulls it out of the kneecap of Hades, as he then rotates in midair and, landing on his feet, charges at Hades once again in a tackle, except this time, instead of taking the tackle to the ground, he only maintains hold of Hades as he repeatedly stabs Hades in the gut with the horn over and over and over, repeatedly lunging and thrusting the end of the horn into the gut of Hades, with Hades beginning to have his body contort and tighten and lose his reflexes due to the constant pain that is growing with every lunge, with every insert of his own horn torn out of his own skull. He finally grabs the wrist of Walter and twists it, forcing the horn out of Walter's hand. However, Walter quickly reverts the wrist grab and contorts the wrist of Hades, forcing him down on his knees once again as he continues holding the wrist, forcing Hades into a lock. He uses his other hand to deliver punches directly down onto the skull of Hades, punching him into the ground. Now, with Hades no longer having the upper hand, and Walter having full control over Hades, punch after punch, and every time Hades tries to absorb himself into the ground, Walter pulls him back up by the wrist and continues delivering an onslaught of punches into his face. As Hades finally manages to get a hold of Walter once again and hurls him with all his might across the field one last time, getting Walter away, freeing him from the onslaught, Hades grabs his stomach in pain as he glares and snarls at Walter, who is beginning to confront him once again as Walter calmly and confidently walks back towards Hades. He looks at Walter with the utmost dismay.
Are you wanting my full power? Are you wanting a real fight, Walter? Do you wish for me to unleash my full power? Become the true Hades? Is that your desire? Is that the end that you desire? Do you want to face off against the true Hades once again?
I don't care what you do, Hades. Unlock your full potential. Give me your full power if that is what you desire. I could care less, says Walter as he tucks on the end of his gloves, continuing to walk towards Hades.
Then so be it,
Responds Hades, as he then begins speaking words that cannot be translated by man, words that have been spoken far too much recently on this planet, far too often by the likes of Walter and Dracula, words that are seldomly spoken on the planet Earth, seldomly spoken around the human man. And as he speaks them, the ground begins to shake and the sky begins to darken, with Vince now standing up from his rock, throwing his last cigarette down.
This is it. This is what I wanted to see,
says Vince, with the others only looking at Vince, not sure what this man has planned, and uncomfortable with the fact that Vince seldomly makes plans without running it by them. And now, the transformation of Hades has begun, Hades releasing his true form as a large red light, a bright red light that nearly blinds Al, Abraham, Alex, and Vince, erupts from his body, with the ground shaking viciously and the ground beginning to crack beneath him, with the sky becoming so dark that the only light that shines on the land is the light coming from Hades himself, as everything in the near vicinity is now a bright red, with the ground cracking and the plates of the earth beginning to shift. And as the light begins to dwindle and the clouds begin to open once again, stands Hades' true form. As he takes only one step, it erupts a massive amount of pressure that is felt through the entire planet, and with the light completely now gone, and the natural light of Earth now shining back down, Vince, Abraham, Al, and Alex can now see the true form of Hades, which is not at all what anyone would presume he'd look like, as his true form resembles more of that of Walter's human form, as he is tall and thin, yet not skinny and lanky, but near a healthy perfection, though he is nowhere near as bulked or as buff as Walter, and nowhere near as tall, he looks like that of a normal human man, as he has long red hair and dark green eyes, with a chiseled chin and long black silk robes, with an olive tone to his skin. Surely an attractive human man, but not a man you'd presume as Hades, not a man you would connect or presume to be that of a pure evil or even that of a god, but only a man that won a genetic lottery, as he then gives a dead, cold stare to Walter.
Now that feels so much better. I will never miss this feeling of tranquility, calmness. Is this what you wanted, Walter? To see my true face as you murder me once again? Punish me for committing no crime. Doing what you must to fulfill the task given to you by men that call themselves gods. Men that should never be challenged nor questioned. Perhaps that is my crime. For daring to challenge the almighty guardians, for daring to question their authority. And of course you will never question them, and yet you call me the fool. I find that quite entertaining, quite amusing. Dog of the Guardians? So, what are you waiting for? I'm sure that nothing makes you happier than burying me. Almost every time, I swear I see a smile upon your face as my grave sinks into the land.
Says Hades to Walter, as Walter continues to walk towards Hades. He then feels a hand press on his shoulder as he looks behind him. Standing there is Vince, as he's looking at Walter with a authoritative expression and strict eyes.
You are far stronger than Hades, I presume. Even if he is stronger than you now, your true form, you are on a different level than him, are you not? Says Vince, with Walter simply just nodding his head. Very well. Then I do not need to see which one of you is stronger. I simply need to see how strong the man that is considered the weakest is. Walter, I wish to fight Hades. Give me this. The second he is about to win, that is when I will allow you to intervene. Says Vince, with Walter again nodding his head, and then simply walking away, allowing Vince to square up against Hades, with Hades looking at Vince with somewhat of a calming smile.
Oh? And who are you? A new contender? A new challenger? Hoping to defeat me for glory, for fame and riches? Do you wish to have the title of the man that beat Hades?
says Hades, with a much calmer demeanor towards Vince than he has had towards Walter, with Vince smiling back at Hades.
No, I have no such ambition. I have no such dreams of grandeur. I only wish to protect this planet and to ensure true freedom. I challenge you because I want to see what the weakest of the higher entities is capable of. I want to see how insignificant I am in comparison. I hope I am not offending you by referring to you as the weakest, though the evidence I have gathered states exactly that. And I want to see how powerful these higher beings are. I want to see how much more you are compared to me, compared to Dracula and all my foes that has come before. I only wish to use you as a calculation for a decision that I will be forced to make,
says Vince, with Hades giving Vince an even warmer smile as he tilts his head to the side.
You wish to challenge the Guardians? You wish to challenge the gods? I can respect that, and I absolutely support it. And you are right, I have always been the weakest in comparison, though that had never stopped me from attempting to do the very thing you claim you want to achieve. I must warn you, young man, if you do this, whether you succeed or fail, you will always be seen as the villain. You will always be seen as a demon, a devil, a villain, a corrupted soul that must be purged. Are you prepared for such consequences? Are you prepared for such brutal punishment?
Responds Hades, with Vince beginning to chuckle at this response as he runs one of his hands through his hair.
I have lived that life since I could remember. Every time I join a side of the heroic, I am forced to betray them or leave them for one reason or another. And even if I am on the side of righteousness, I have always been forced to pretend or play the side of the villain to ensure that a greater villain doesn't rise up. I have always kept balance, with me being seen as a beast or a monster being the result of it all every time. This is no different, only on a larger scale. So, do you accept my challenge? Hades, do you accept the challenge for me to measure your strength against my own.
The challenge you have put before me is accepted.
Responds Hades as he nods his head to Vince, with Vince nodding back as his hair becomes a pure white, and his force-filled aura a solid gold, with him forming 2 golden force-filled balls in the palm of his hands, while Al, Alex, and Abraham watch from the distance. "What on earth is he doing?" says Abraham, with Alex and Al watching as Alex wraps herself with her arms. "I don't know. You'd think he'd just let Walter handle it, don't you? Why isn't he just letting Walter handle it?" says Alex, as Vince finally charges in towards Hades, throwing 2 force-filled balls directly towards him. Hades bats them away with his hands, smacking them as if they were nothing more than flies as they fling across the air, with Vince landing a massive punch directly into the jawline of Hades. However, Hades' face doesn't even move. His body doesn't even flinch as the pure might of the punch begins to crack the very force field of Vince. As Hades simply backhands Vince, he goes flying across the land, flung across the field, ragdolling across the ground as he slams into the wall of a hill, with his force field already giving out to the most simplest strike, a simple backhand, and his force field has already given out. As he stands up once again, reforming his force field, he charges once again, throwing even more force-filled balls as he charges, with Hades just simply backhanding each one away, slapping them away from him as they fly and explode in the distance, with Vince landing another punch as massive and as heavy as he could possibly deliver, followed by another one and another one, delivering an onslaught upon Hades, though Hades doesn't flinch nor move, and the strikes have little to no effect on Hades, and the strikes that Vince is throwing are causing more damage to himself than they are to Hades. As Vince quickly steps back away from Hades, he gives Hades a large smile.
"I am not finished yet,"
says Vince as he puts 2 fingers high in the air, and suddenly, drones are now flying around Hades. Countless drones that are now creating blind spots for Vince to hide behind. And in the distance, the orphan that goes by the name of Prince, who Vince had recruited days before this, is now controlling the drones, making sure to create as many blind spots as he must for Vince, while countless other orphans that Vince had recruited stand in the distance, hidden away, looking through scopes attached to rifles aimed directly at Hades, as Vince then begins making his footsteps and his footwork align with the drones, only striking Hades in the blind spots, with the bullets flying from every rifle in the distance held by an orphan, connecting with Hades. And though the bullets are simply bouncing off, they are causing a distraction, a flurry of flies, if you'd call it. And Vince now cannot be struck by Hades, though Hades does not appear to be trying very hard. as Hades simply stands in amazement that this man is trying to win, not by the pure strength of his own will, but by the help and guidance of others, as he then snaps his fingers and it blows every drone away and stops every bullet dead in its tracks and stares at Vince, giving him a large smile as Al and Abraham see that Vince is not opposed to help. Al quickly throws Excalibur as it swings and spins in the air towards Hades. However, Hades just simply catches it by the blade without it penetrating any skin and hurls it straight back at Al as it stabs into the ground right beneath Al's feet with a tremendous might that causes the ground to crack. As Abraham then creates a large ball of fire in the sky, just as large as he had created for when he fought the chief, and he swings his arms down as the ball of fire comes crashing towards Hades. Even the chief could not survive this. At least, not if he were mortal. And Hades extends his hands out, and the fireball connects to his hand, stopping the fireball dead in his tracks as Hades' feet begins digging into the ground from the pure weight and mass of the fireball. He then puts another hand upon the fireball and begins squeezing it and pressing it inwards, compressing the large fireball as it finally begins to compress into a much smaller ball that now fits neatly in the palm of Hades' hands as he simply flicks it into the sky, and it explodes far in the distance, lighting the night sky as if the sun had risen, as he gives Abraham, Al, and Vince a straight scowling glare, with Vince then just collapsing and sitting on the ground. As he looks at Hades,
Thank you. Thank you for showing me,
says Vince, with Hades nodding his head towards him, as Vince then looks at Walter.
Okay, Walter. Do what you must.
As Walter then stands up from the ground as he dusts dirt off his pant legs.
Alright, well, you guys are gonna wanna plug your ears and close your eyes,
says Walter, with Al quickly remembering what had happened when he said this the last time, and so he quickly plugs his ears and closes his eyes, with Alex telling Abraham that he must surely listen. The three of them close their eyes and plug their ears, with Vince shaking his head.
No, Walter. I want to see it. I want to hear it,
says Vince, with Walter nodding his head.
Very well. Just know that seeing me may actually kill you,
says Walter, as he then speaks the words that can be translated by no man, and a bright white light, far brighter than Hades, erupts from him. The skies do not become dark and cloudy like Hades, but instead bright and blue, and the ground begins to shake and crack as the plates of earth begin to shift. Walter's true form is quite similar to Hades, tall and thin, slim, yet not scrawny or skinny, but near a perfect, healthy proportion, as he has a much smoother skin than Hades, much finer, brighter hair, and not quite as chiseled of a jawline. As Hades begins to take a step, the plates of the earth begin to shift. As Hades watches Walter, knowing that the end is about to come for him, Walter continues walking towards Hades carefully, as if he is tiptoeing on glass, trying not to break the fragile planet that he now walks. With every gentle footstep he takes, the plates of the earth begin to give. The earth begins to shake and vibrate and rattle, as Walter carefully and calmly and slowly walks closer and closer to Hades. They are now toe to toe as Hades throws a punch. Walter simply tilts his head, avoiding the punch, and slowly extends his hand out and gently touches the forehead of Hades, and the mere touch from Walter causes the very flesh of Hades to begin to disintegrate, and the pure pressure crushes every bone in Hades' body as his body begins to shatter and disintegrate. His flesh removed from his bones as his bones shatter into a pile, and in a blink of an eye, Hades is no more but a pile of bones. As Walter then quickly reverts back to his human form, with Vince terrified at what he had just seen, shaking, sweating, out of breath. His mind cannot wrap around that kind of power that Walter had just displayed. How, by simply touching Hades, eradicated him from the very face of the earth, extinguished any existence of Hades. With the rest opening their eyes and celebrating the victory, Vince only feels fear. As the group is now reunited, Walter then feels something upon the earth as he quickly looks at Alex.
Dracula has done it. Yeah. I have just felt Dracula open the box to the god orb. We're probably gonna want to stop him,
says Walter, with Abraham, Al, and Alex quick to respond and agree, with Vince looking in the sky.
Dracula, I demand your presence,
says Vince, as he is then plucked and disappears. As Vince then appears in the gold and white temple, seeing Dracula holding the open box with the god orb, as Dracula gently sets it down upon one of the tables. You demand to see me, Vince?
I do. I saw what Walter is capable of. I saw what I'm capable of compared to Hades, and Hades was nothing more than an ant compared to Walter. And if Walter is an agent of the other Guardians, then surely they outrank him in power.
That is true, yes. You are very accurate, Vince. So, why have you demanded counsel with me?
You planned it, didn't you? You brought Hades back just to let him die again, just so that I could see what Walter and the other Guardians are capable of. You allowed an already suffering man to be forced to be killed and murdered once again, didn't you?
Says Vince with anger, as Dracula then walks to him and pokes Vince in the chest. My, Vince. Are you mourning Hades? You barely knew him. And he is Hades. No one mourns for Hades. You really are a softie behind that hard shell, aren't you, Vince? Says Dracula as he continues poking Vince in the chest, with Vince then slapping Dracula's hand away.
Well, your plan worked, Dracula. Now that I see what you were warning me of, now that I have seen the power of those who rule above this planet, I can't help but know that the right course of action is to ally with you and allow you to have your total control over this planet. Turning everyone into a genetic blessing must be done. It will make us stronger so that we can free ourselves from power like that.
Well, yes. However, we are not the only planet that they rule over. You are not so naive to think that we're the only ones. There are many other galaxies, many other universes, many other planets that suffer from the rule of these men. Yet no one has been able to overthrow them. What I am setting out to do is truly impossible. This very well could be a suicide mission, Vince.
I am aware. I'm aware of how hard this will be. And I understand that my family, Alex, Al, and Abraham, will not agree with me. Though I will try, I will most likely have to betray my family once again. I only need you to know one thing, Dracula. Your control over this planet is all but temporary. Once we have defeated, if we defeat the higher entities and Walter, I will fight you. I will come after you and take your rule away. I will not allow you to rule this planet for all of eternity. I will ensure absolute freedom,
says Vince as he now stands toe-to-toe with Dracula, snarling at him, locking eyes with him, as Dracula returns a smile to Vince and nodding his head. I would have assumed that'd be your response. I'd have it no other way, Vince. So, that is your decision then. You are now on my side, ruling beside me, fighting, having my back. And I can trust you? I can trust you not to betray me? For now, you can trust. My loyalty will be with you. But my loyalty is not undying. If you do anything to make me question my moral obligations, I will turn on you in a heartbeat. You have that as a promise, says Vince, with Dracula putting his hand on Vince's shoulder. Very well. Your friends and Walter will be here soon to stop me from consuming the God Orb. It is up to you to make sure that they do not disrupt my plans. And that is Genetic Wars July 27th Part 3, and I will be continuing Genetic Wars and concluding Genetic Wars in the next chapter. And then we will be moving on to the next part of the Genetic Blessing series, or maybe to a different story and give the Genetic Blessings a break. Haven't decided yet, not sure yet, and the time hasn't come yet. So, I'll see you guys on the next one on Genetic Wars Conclusion. I really do hope you guys have been enjoying it. I hope you guys enjoyed Genetic Wars so far. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys. Do not get by a meteor. Take care of yourselves, and bye.